Hey, look out. It's Faith Talk Live. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
Well, if you're watching YouTube Live, Facebook Live, you'll see Sonya Hunter there. It's been almost 2 years, about a year and a half or so. We talked to Sonya about her book, Unsurvivable. It is a great story, and we'll catch up with her. Well, let's do that right now. First of all, Sonya, how are you?
I'm great. How are you guys?
We're good.
Now
Good.
it's been a year and a half since we connected. What's been going on with you guys over the last year and a half, and then we'll get into Unsurvivable and the smelling of a new book maybe in 2023. But what have you guys been up to?
Oh my goodness. We have a crazy busy life, but we have a granddaughter now. And of course, Connor just loves her. She just turned a year old. Connor turned 18. Connor's a senior this year. So, and we homeschool him. So we've had a busy, fun, exciting year.
Sounds like it. But you've come through it all, and you're here in 2023. And,
Right.
So the last time we talked to you, we talked about your book, Unsurvivable. For those who may not have seen it or known about it, give us kind of the brief synopsis of Unsurvivable.
Yeah, so in May of 2006, my husband had a car accident that claimed his life and our 6-year-old son Adam's life. And it left Connor, who was 19 months old at the time, with a high-level spinal cord injury at C1, 2, and 3, which left him a quadriplegic and on a ventilator. And, it was a pretty tough time. Doctors didn't give me much hope for him, actually even pushed me to let him go. And of course, me, I'm a very strong-willed person. So I was like, no, I don't believe God saved Connor from this wreck that was unsurvivable, which is how I got the name of the book.
Hmm.
And I believed that I was to push forward with Connor's life. And I was told he would never survive a year. And here we are almost 17 years later. And like I said, Connor just turned 18 and he's just a miracle. So I just, God had just put it on my heart that, he wanted me to write this book. I kept pushing it off for years, like, oh, I'm not a writer. I can't do this. You're crazy. And then sure enough, I ended up writing the book and sharing a bit about our story and, about the grief that I went through, just through the tragedy and all that. So yeah, so now it's put it on my heart now, that I need to write another book because the book is more about the beginning of our journey we've been on. So people have reached out to me as like, we want to know more about Connor now, what life is like now with Connor. So
Yeah.
My goal this year is to try to write the next chapter of our life. So
Wow.
Now, Sonya, in the book that you're, I don't know if you've started writing notes or it's all in your head or at this point, but do you think that you will include just the challenges that you've had? I mean, look at Connor, he's 18, that's amazing. But anytime that you need any type of course, you homeschool, but any outside help to get benefits and things like that for a child that has needs like that, that's a challenge in itself, and it can be just exasperating, right?
yes, and actually, yes, that's part of what I will go through in the book too as well. I've already thought about that. Actually, I'm on 2 boards. We live in Oklahoma, and so I'm actually on a board as an advocate for our state insurance that he's on, and also for another entity that's for people with disabilities. I laugh all the time. I'm like, they got tired of me calling in state representatives and all that. So they finally were like, let's just put her on board so we can keep a better control over what she's doing.
Yeah.
So, but yes, because of that, you have to fight a lot when you have a loved one with disabilities. There's a lot to it. It's funny because before this happened in my life, I just kind of assumed, oh, if you're disabled, you're taken care of if you're 100% disabled. That is so far from the truth. There's so many medical uncovered expenses that insurance does not cover. So there's a lot of challenges just in that alone.
Wow. Well, bless you for jumping in and being an advocate. I mean, because obviously you had your hands full already and very busy full time being a mom to Connor and everything else you're doing, but jumping in and being an advocate to help those who are facing this, whether they've, the child was born with it or something happened like with Connor,
Right.
just to be able to have somebody that knows what they've been through and can help them guide them through all that stuff.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. I always say I wish I would have had something like that in the beginning, because it was really tough trying to navigate the waters and where to go, plus grieving and in the midst of a tragedy and your whole life changing. It's very overwhelming.
Yeah.
Sonya Hunter with us. She is the author of Unsurvivable. It's a book that's been out for about a year and a half or so. Pick up that book. She is getting ready to put the book 2 together. Folks that have read the book, what has stood out to you about what they've said about it?
Just, it's funny. My closest friends that were there in the beginning were like, we never really understood 100% clearly what it was like for you going through grief, even walking through that journey with you. And, I think it's because, a lot of times when you're going through things like that, you try to put a smile on your face and to the world, and pretend like everything's okay. But when I wrote the book, I wanted to make sure that I really got deep into my feelings, because you are going through those, and you try to hide those a lot, but it's something you have to go through and deal with. And only by the grace of God can you go through stuff like that. So the feedback I got was, pretty much the same across the board. Lots of tears in the first part of the book, because the first part of the book's a hard read, just going through the tragedy part of it. And then people being mad at the doctors, which I'm like, no, we have great relationships with these doctors now. That's not what it's about. But, and then of course everybody cheering Connor on. So we've had a lot of good feedback from it, and that's the other feedback. That's why the other book, everyone's like, we just want to know more about Connor now. I'm like, yeah, well, I couldn't write a huge novel because I could have went on and on. So there's so many miracles and so many things we've experienced along the way. It's just unbelievable. I tell people all the time, I could just write a book over 2019, because Connor ended up with a bowel obstruction due to scar tissue that had formed, and they had to remove part of his bowel. And we spent 154 days total in the hospital back.
Wow.
Wow.
And he almost didn't survive that. Due to the pain, because the way your body with a spinal cord injury responds to pain, his heart ended up having trouble and ended up stopping. They done CPR 3 times on him. And then, of course, he became septic. I mean, it was just him surviving 2019 was just unbelievable in itself. And again, like in 2006, we just constantly seen God showing us so many miracles, even through that tragedy. So it's just God is so amazing. I mean, until you've walked through trials and tragedies, sometimes it's really hard to see that, because we just live life like, oh, everything's great and hunky dory. And then it's not till you're in the midst of a trial that you truly can see how amazing God truly is. So,
and Sonya, that's part of my next question is, through all that, I mean, that can easily bring on anger towards God and questioning at God. What has God taught you about your faith personally through that whole thing? I mean, I'm sure you had days of going, God, why?
And actually, my first book, I do bring that up, because, I even had, feelings in the beginning of jealousy too, that God had my other son and I didn't. And it's crazy, all the emotions that you go through. And yes, there were times that I was mad at God, still have been over the years. When I see Connor go through things, I'm like, God, you could stop this. But every time we're in the midst of something like that, I don't see it right at that moment. It might be weeks later, might be months later, but I always see, the bigger picture of why something might have happened. And it's not always easy, but, I always tell people you only have to have the faith of a mustard seed. And sometimes that's all I truly have. And a mustard seed is tiny.
Yeah.
But, I always tell people before the accident happened in my life, I mean, me and my husband were taking the boys to church, but I look back now and I feel like, not that we weren't raising them up correctly about, teaching them about God and stuff, but it's almost like you're going through the motions.
Yeah.
And you have something like this happen and you realize my relationship with God now is on a completely different level than it was before.
Yeah.
And he's truly all we have. I mean, especially when you're fighting battles, he's truly the only person that can give you any kind of comfort.
What an inspiration she is. Sonya Hunter, author of Unsurvivable, and continue to pray for Sonya and her family and Connor. As she mentioned, just some of the slightest things that the average person can get, like a cold or et cetera. It can be more challenging for someone like Connor. So continue to pray for him. And we're looking forward to that next book. Do you know what you'll call that? Will be Unsurvivable too? What do you think you'll call that?
I don't know. I go back and forth on that, but it may need to just be Unsurvivable too, so people realize that it's the same story. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, we'd love to catch up with you when you get that together.
Yes.
Sonya Hunter, you can go to, what's the website there, Dan? Unsurvivablebook.com is a great place to go to. Also follow her on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Not the TikTok, though. You're not on the TikTok, are you?
I am, but it's on my personal. It's not that I'll be honest, I haven't really figured out TikTok just yet.
You're not really missing anything. It's okay.
Sonya, what a blessing you are. We'd love to talk to you again. We got to take a break. We'll be right back. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
This is Faith Talk Live.